Welcome to this. It's November 11th, 2023, Saturday. I'm Sandra Ladley, and welcome to this session hosted by Karuna Training called Beyond War with Ourselves and Others. So my name's Sandra Ladley, and I'm in a little town called Albany, California, 1 square mile with the handle Urban Village by the Bay. I'm in the Bay Area, right on San Francisco Bay. This topic is close to my heart. How could it not be? And my father was in the Korean conflict, so I'm also a daughter of. And I connect with both. I like that we're already pointing to external, internal, the continuum between what's happening in us and what's happening in the world, and what can we do about it? That we can make a difference. And it might not be in the ways that we have thought to do habitually. There's options, and it's hard, and it means feeling more. So here, now I'm going to do a little bit on the background of Karuna. Okay, so this is sort of the piece about what Karuna Training is. And I'll just say, excuse me, before that, today in the US, this is Veterans Day, November 11th. It's the actual day. Which was President Wilson initiated to honor the veterans of World War I in 1919. And that's over 100 years ago. It's 2023. It still feels very recent. I remember one time watching a New Year's thing with Peter Jennings and ABC News a few years ago, and it was the millennium changing to the next millennia, to 2000. And he said, well, what is the hallmark of this last century? If you look at it, what were the real themes of the 20th century? And I said, I'm sad to tell you that the real theme was war, the real theme of this last 100 years. So we're in the next century. It was later, at that time, it was called Armistice Day. And then in 1938 in the US, it became a national holiday, which is celebrated. If it's on a weekend like today, workers get a federal holiday, and change to Veterans Day. So it's a day to honor, that was designed to honor veterans, those who are willing to go, or they made the choice to go. You often think it's their young people who don't really know what they're getting into. They might not have had many choices, but they were brave. And we're honoring the fallen and the lost and everyone who's been affected by war, which I hate to say, that's all of us. We're all affected by war, both now and in our histories. It's in our DNA. It's in our bones. War is part of us. It's part of our humanness. And so today we're going to be exploring war and moving beyond war and alternatives to war in our hearts and minds. And by the way, that's I don't know if you ever saw a documentary about the real experience of the Vietnam War, Hearts and Minds. I love that documentary about vets talking about what it was like, their real experience of being in Vietnam. So Karuna Training, why do we take on this topic? Karuna means compassion. The word Karuna is from Sanskrit, and it means compassion. And it's a training that gives you incredible compassion-based skills that are personally transformative and that you can apply in your everyday life, regardless of your walk of life, your age. It is a compassion-based certificate program, and it's rooted in the contemplative tradition, but it is ecumenical. It's not religious. It's for everyone in every walk of life, and we do our best to make it accessible to everyone. We host lots of offerings. Some are free, some have a little charge, but it's oriented towards a longer training. So the training program started in Europe in the 90s, and there's been many iterations of that 2-year program in Europe, like 18 or something in different countries. And then in 2013, Melissa Moore, the director of Karuna, and I partnered to bring it to North America. And we've done 8 cycles in North America, 2 in Northern California, 1 in Seattle, 1 in LA, 1 in Albuquerque, 1 in Baltimore, 1 in Colorado, I might be forgetting one. Albuquerque. And then there is an optional third year where you can go further and really apply the skills in your life. And it's been, it used to be an all in-person program. And of course, like every other program, we shifted, and both of these gals were affected by becoming more of a hybrid program that combined Zoom and things, what we could do and where there was benefit in continuing the training on Zoom and what we really needed to do in person in retreat. And so it's a balance like that. And that's a very live topic. And it's hard right now because we're orienting it. We're really working on that and listening to people about how to adapt the program. So come one, come all. And we also have sessions with topics like, classes, like a few week classes and things. And so you're now on the newsletter for Karuna if you made it to this program and to see what's being offered. But feel free, if it's not for you, to unsubscribe at any time if this isn't for you, or if you feel overwhelmed by the email. So Karuna, it draws on, it starts with the cornerstone, you could say, is the attitude or the view that we all possess radiant, brilliant wisdom and sanity. We all possess that. You might call it, it's also our intrinsic health, our intrinsic wisdom. That's something that we each possess, which is characterized by openness. This is sort of the classical definition, compassion and clarity. And that we can train to come back to that again and again, our inherent sanity, our inherent wisdom, our inherent capacity for an open mind and heart. Doesn't matter what we're lost in, what war we might be entangled with ourselves, with others, with feeling overwhelmed, with feeling numb, with going a little nuts in one way or another, with being wrapped in addiction, with whatever, that we can train to attune to coming back into our basic being and our basic true nature. That's always possible. And we can cultivate that attitude. One of the co-founders of the contemplative psychology program at Naropa University in Boulder, that those of us who sort of, the elders, many of us trained there, I trained there, Dr. Ed Podball, he had this term, islands of clarity. So even in the middle of a rage, or even people in hospitals right now who are ready to give up themselves or the world, or in psychosis, or in dementia, or whatever, we can train to attune to when we are awake, when we're awake in our being, and learn to orient towards that like a rudder. In the Buddhist tradition, that's called Buddha nature. Our innate awakeness of heart and mind, and it has a capacity of resiliency. If you think about it, how often we orient towards something's fundamentally wrong with me, and creating a whole stories of our lives of what I've done wrong and what's wrong with me and what's wrong with everyone else. What if we sort of shifted our allegiance, not in a Pollyanna way, but could I actually attune to recognizing when I made healthy choices, when I did the right thing, when I did what I needed to do to survive, and that was okay at that time. So how we can cultivate that, a cornerstone, the sort of first method that we do and that we'll be doing today is mindfulness practice. As you said, Karen, is beginning a meditation practice. It's not the only way, but that's where we start. And which meditation allows us to become more aware of our experience, both internally and externally. And through it, we can begin to bring together our body and mind and become more attuned to the present moment. You can start to see when you're just going off in a story about what's happening right now versus what's actually happening right now, or when you're hijacked emotionally. So meditation is so much happens. You think, oh God, you're just sitting there doing nothing. And I don't even know if I can do it more than a few minutes. It's profound. Just actually plopping down on the earth and attuning to the present moment. And human beings have this in our bones too. Sitting down on the earth and attuning to the world as it is right now versus our story about it. not the past, not the future, but right now. But meditation isn't enough. There's all kinds of now, so many documented benefits of meditation. We could make a list. We could spend the next 2 hours about it. So many research projects about it. And also, it's not for everyone. It's not a one size fits all, and it's not always applicable. There's sometimes when it's not appropriate to meditation or to do meditation, or it's too much vulnerability in traumatic situations, whatever. It's not a one size fits all, and it's not the only thing. So in Karuna, we join meditation practice because maybe you've heard of this term spiritual bypassing. There are many people who in spiritual traditions who have sort of taken on meditation as in a way as sort of hiding out. I'm just going to sit here and space out versus you can do that too. So it's good to be aware. It's multifaceted. In Karuna, we join meditation practice and method with compassion-based methods, which is the approach that we have. Our hearts are limitless, much wider and deeper than we know. And that we have the capacity to hold our own pain and to hold the pain of other people. And in Karuna, it's a strength-based training of cultivating our ability to oscillate our hearts. And we have a method that we teach called compassionate exchange, whereby it's a form of deep listening practice, listening from the heart, where you train in I'm feeling you, and I'm feeling me, and I'm feeling us. It's so juicy and alive and transformative. So compassionate exchange, deep listening, compassion-based methods, and that's not the only one, but one that's sort of another real primary vehicle of what happens in Karuna training, just like meditation practice. And this is such good medicine. It's another good medicine for our times. Deep listening and acceptance, as you said, Karen, can I listen and feel with an open heart? Neither pro or con. Can I actually be here and listen fully without reacting? Or if I do react, can I notice my reaction and come back? Here's one more point that's key about Karuna training. So I'm just touching on different aspects. There's the view that the inseparability of our own confusion and wisdom, which are like this. Our confusion and wisdom are right next to each other. So those things that you might hate about yourself or feel most ashamed or embarrassed about are right next door to where your wisdom is. They're actually, and that we can attune to seeing when we're doing our version of acting out in one way or another. We can go, oh, I'm doing that. What's happening now? And the source of our training in that is working with what are called the 5 wisdoms or the 5 elements, which seeing our reactions are like reactions happening in nature. The 5 elements that people on Earth in different cultures on every continent have been recognizing: fire, water, earth, air, and wind. And we can see these elemental energies operating in ourselves. So just as an example, let's say you're a more watery person. Do you tend to freeze up and get very sharp like ice, or boil over? But that also means that maybe you have more of a sense, there's a capacity for flipping that to fluidity and a wide mind, wide energy of mind. That's just an example. Or let's say you're a fiery person, you're a passionate person. Your passion gets you in trouble. You're a sex addict. You're whatever, you're always looking for the other. But that sense of warmth, that clinging like fire, can also be a profound capacity for love and connectedness with other people. So that's just an example. So in Karuna, in the retreats that we do, we use a particular method called Maitri space awareness practice, where we work with the elemental energies very directly, it's quite an amazing thing. And there are many other tools and methods, and I'll just say a key part of the program is being in a cohort, being in a community. After the second program, it's closed to other people joining. So there is something that you learn from being in circle with other people, as far as seeing their wisdom and learning from their journey, but also that were the reflections that come to you from being in a circle about yourself that you wouldn't get necessarily on your own or in therapy from being in group, right? It's quite amazing. And with taking the journey together and rubbing against people, you start, I like this person, I don't like this person, what happens there? What's the wisdom there that you learn about your reactions and about yourself and the limits that you've set? It's really quite incredible. So those are just a few aspects that I sort of key things, meditation, compassion-based practices, working with the elemental energies, both personally and in nature and through ritual, being part of a cohort, sort of the essence of the Karuna training journey. And Karuna is very alive, even though it started in the 90s, and you could say it started 2,500 years ago, in a sense, with the Buddha. We are really continually looking at the program and listening to students as far as changing it with the times and what's needed now. It's different. We're in a different time than it was in the 90s or the 2000s or the whenever. So it's evolving. It's very awake. It's alive. It's very alive. So today's theme is beyond war with ourselves and others. How might we, as Pema Chodron would say, practice peace in times of war? How can we actually do it? How can we actually make a difference? The first is to see that war begins at home. We all just want some peace, just leave me alone. I've got my thing, you've got your thing. War begins at home in the ways that we close our hearts. And we close our hearts, and then there's a chain reaction of turning away. It's me versus you. It's out over there. It's not here. It's your problem. It's not mine. We get worked up. It's the other guys. And, we close our hearts for some reason, and then we get an attitude or a fixed view of some kind. All of the conflicts on this earth started out that way, with a feeling of something and a closing and developing a story or a narrative. And then they become so hardened into, like we see in the Mideast, or we see politically in the US, it seems like there's no way for the two stories to meet. They're hardened. And it is strangely becoming amplified now with social media and artificial intelligence and everything. It's almost like the truth doesn't matter, because the stories have become the thing, the hardened stories. I read recently that, or maybe it was Heather Cox Richardson, who referred to that they think that the 2024 election in the US may be the last possibility of a free and fair election, because everyone's so influenced by artificial intelligence that you don't really know the truth anymore. It's very scary. Okay, so hardening here becomes a narrative and sides. What, couldn't we just live together with ourselves? Couldn't we just, harden even pro or for or against ourselves? Couldn't we just live together and not be at war with the planet? Raping the planet of its resources? War everywhere. I recently learned this framework of looking at our times as three eras or three approaches. Well, pre-tragic, tragic, and post-tragic. Pre-tragic is thinking things we're just going along that normal, no big deal, not too worried about things. Tragic is the big fall and falling into one crisis and never after another and becoming nihilistic, and we're doomed, and the fire and alarms are blaring and we're hopeless, locked into a tragic attitude. So pre-tragic is, oh, everything's fine and normal kind of denial. Tragic, falling into that. Post-tragic is very akin to the contemplative tradition, that we can feel the suffering and see the horror the hardening that's happening in big and small ways, but we can also see the possibilities. And we can also recognize the moments of softening, recognize the moments of clarity, recognize the alternative to doom, to war. And this is not like those of us who grew up with Disney. This is not Pollyanna. Oh, let's just be good. No, it's actually true. It exists in nature, that goodness and love and compassion and being part of and in harmony with reality. It almost feels like that's not possible. We become so contaminated by the aggressive perspective that we forget that there's an alternative. So sort of a post-aggressive reality is possible. It's said that we are both sowing and reaping the seeds of 7 generations. So it's interesting to think about what our lives are now are very much affected by what happened interesting to look back, what was going on 7 generations ago. And at the same time, we are sowing seeds for 7 generations into the future. What seeds? So there are both seeds of hatred and conflict and trauma and tragedy, and there are also seeds of love and compassion and joy and connectedness. There, it's a mixture. What do we, what are we feeling, and what do we want to sow? Every interaction, every moment in our lives is like these seeds. We're planting seeds, we're reaping seeds, and we're planting seeds. My family, everyone except for me, is ideologically quite very different from me. And I absolutely adore particularly my baby sister, and we're very close, but we could not be more different ideologically. And it's very painful. I have a dear friend here. They're all in upstate New York on the Canadian border, not far from Toronto. That's where my family is. That's where I'm going back next week to be with family over the Thanksgiving holiday. But a dear friend of mine here in California keeps saying to me, I don't understand why you haven't just cut off from your family. Why don't you just, move on? And that just does not feel right to me. That's not my way. It's hard, but I want to keep, I'm going to cry. I want to keep doing my best to open and to keep planting seeds of peace and love in my family situation. So many families now are so divided, at war with each other. And then now going into the holiday tables, sitting next to each other, and there's nothing that you can say, but it's all boiling underneath the tablecloth with all the food. Underneath the table around your ankles are all the political views and so how to, just sort of sit there in that rawness, as you said, Margaret, how to sit in that rawness and stay open with what's happening. We can start to see, behind the way, and so much of it is based in fear, right? We're terrified about what's going to happen next, and uncertainty. We're we don't know where we're going. How to hold that with a sense of openness, and how to hold this forgiveness of ourselves and others without condemnation or condescension. I could dismiss my sister going, She's just not educated. She just doesn't know. No, can I keep feeling her heart and where she's coming from? Because underneath is really, it's our heart, it's our soft hearts that we're wanting to protect. It's our soft hearts that we're wanting to protect, and we feel afraid. All of us just want to love and be loved. That's how we started out. All of us just want to belong. In moving beyond war in the contemplative tradition, it starts with a sense of feeling that rawness of our own hearts, and feeling some, taking some responsibility is a big word, but accountability, if you can think of another one, ownership, not pride, vigor and capacity and willingness to take responsibility for our own heart journey, to notice when we're hardening and when we're softening, and to stay attuned to the possibilities. Think about it for a moment. Here's just a little list of the kinds of things that make our hearts harden. Resentment, jealousy, a sense of right and wrong, confusion, not knowing what to believe, uncertainty, revenge, retaliation, wishing harm or wanting to destroy other people. I mean, there's quite a list of what happens when we harden our hearts, where we go with it. Wow, that's so great. Definitely, you're reminding me of how the don't give up is right next to the confusion and the wisdom. The tendency, the habit, the what might be more harmful is right next to. So, and I'm also thinking about the Dick Schwartz, the parts work, internal family systems. So there's a part of you that wants to give up. What would it feel like to give up, actually, for a little bit, to let that part of you actually feel? It's not like you're giving up on your life and your whole multifaceted you, but to just sort of inhabit or embody giving upness, surrender to it, as an energy, as an emotional energy, as something that's alive, not signing on the dotted line as a nihilist, but that to actually feel giving upness in an embodied way. What does that feel like? Maybe there's something that wants to happen there. With each of these, they're poisonous, but they also contain a seed of something that could be transformative. It is said classically from Buddhism, just drawing on that. And I was looking at Pema Chodron's book again this morning, or as I was preparing this for this, called Practicing Peace in Times of War, just a little chat book, which is really helpful. And she said that here's few things that I'm going to add on to it. What can really help us? She says making some kind of vow or making a commitment, in the Buddhist path, or even in other religious path, this is not religious, but making some kind of vow or kind of commitment, like we take marriage vows, or, I'm going to make a vow. Now, a vow doesn't mean you're going to always be doing, it's an aspiration. It's an aspiration. So, for example, it could be the vow of, I'm on the path of having an open heart. And I'm going to just start with, see if I can recognizing the different ways that my heart hardens, and there's going to be times when I do it and times when I don't, and I go way off the deep end and I come back. So it's like, making some kind of vow or aspiration for yourself. I really like that, or some kind of commitment. I'm committing, I'm orienting, having an alignment. Doesn't mean you're perfect, and it is all inclusive of mistakes, but having an orientation. Like Karen, you said, or Catherine, you said, aligning with the path of acceptance and equanimity. I'm going to take that on. I'm going to take on acceptance. What, as a guiding light, what is that about? I'm going to orient towards that. It's a path, it's a practice of discovery. So I invite you to think about something that you might want to take on. We can close with this today, but an aspiration, an orientation, a vow to be a commitment to something. Okay. And then she also talks about this requires a path and patience, unbelievable patience with the journey of up and down and all over, and being inclusive of the many different ways of the things that we see and the falling down, and they recognizing the how things are always changing. You're not condemned. You're not condemned. So, 2 steps forwards, 1 step back, 1 step sideways, 1.5 steps forward, turn around. Patience, you take on something, and it's a journey of learning and just staying with it, sort of in a kind of grounded way. So, for me, thinking about noticing when my heart is hardening, there's a lot going on there, and it's very subtle. And how often I, as Pema Chodron would say, I bite the hook. I just go for it. I just go for the right. Can I come back from that and to see when I've just gone rah, 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 or when I've just said, I don't want to feel a damn thing. I'm going to eat a whole bag of potato chips and turn on Netflix. Right. Whatever. I'm just rah, rah, okay. And then come back. And other times when something surprising happens, like with my sister, where we might be talking about something like abortion, and there might be an opening in our conversation that is amazing. That's completely amazing. So openings are occurring too. The islands of clarity, and that things can shift. This is how great movements in history have happened, is patiently having an orientation to what feels right to you, and joining it with patience. How we can plant seeds of peace instead of seeds of war. There are so many examples. I think of the film, remember the Hollywood film from 12 Angry Men, the jury, and they were all going to, I think, sentence the guy in an old black and white film from the 50s. This guy was going to be hanged, but Henry Fonda was the one voice in the jury. He was bringing sense to the whole situation, and everyone shifted by just holding on to the truth of what was actually going. He was working with the real facts versus people leaping to conclusions. Or even, Thich Nhat Hanh, talking about the boat people who, as refugees, making the journey from Vietnam to 8 other parts of Asia, or even some went as far as Australia in their boats from Vietnam. How did they make it? If just one person could stay patiently, economously sane and stable, while other people were terrified and weeping and ready to jump overboard and full of fear, if one person could stay sane, they would make it. There's many stories of that. So then I would add to what Pema said about some sense of vow and having patience. I would add calling in examples like that you turn to. So in my life, I think of Martin Luther King, because he was a big influence in my childhood, and I can call him in my body, his example, and seeing him on television of what it felt like not to go for war. So to call in examples that you on this path of peace. And I would also add finding support. Where are finding your kin who are going to support you in this journey? Who's going to be a help to you? You can't do it alone, whether it be an activist group, a recovery group, a Karuna circle. It doesn't matter. How are you going to get support for moving forward? Increased awareness, I find, in a way, is its own reward. That has just what I have learned and how I feel in my life, being willing to open to what's actually going on with me or other people. Whether I'm a success or a failure, I wouldn't trade that for anything. To me, that is really precious. And including that at any moment I could see I've got something over my eyes. It's like, oh, the rug's pulled out. I could be discovering that the rug's pulled, being, for example, in my spiritual path, the rug got pulled out after 40 years. Oh, that doesn't mean I'm going to stay loyal to it because I've invested so much psychologically and financially and in my community. Guess what? The rug got pulled out and I had to leave. Wow, boy, is that hard. But things like that. So the rug gets pulled out, but the trade-off of actually embodying, feeling the truth in your bones, is I wouldn't trade that. And it is messy, the knowing what to accept and what to reject and when to say yes and when to say no. That is really continually messy. And there is help from the world in one starting to recognize when you're overextending, Catherine. I don't think opening yourself to seeing more, having a vaster lens, necessarily could lead to you saying, I need to do less and more self-care. It doesn't automatically pry you open to, now I have to be helping more and more people in every situation. It actually could lead to less. So that's really interesting. Can start to recognize for myself when I'm not being helpful. So I want to invite you to maybe take as our muse this inquiry, if you wish, this idea of hardening our hearts, noticing when we're opening and closing. Not that it's black and white, but sort of noticing the continuum of expanding and contracting when we go away, when we cut off, when we, sort of the whole play in our hearts, like we're playing our hearts, discovering them as an instrument. I would invite you to take that as a muse. And I want to call in with gratitude the people who sat on the earth before us and the places that we're in. For me, that is the Miwok and the Ohlone started here. And also I want to call in those that have come before us, who we see as ancestors and on this path of opening our hearts, holding our hearts, that we can handle it, that we can do it. They've exemplified doing it, being present with reality and suffering and continuing. So let's do that. So first, just find a good spot for yourself. And I'm not going to talk too much. I'm just going to offer a little. We'll just sit for about 10 minutes. Let yourself move into your body. Feel into your body where you are. Take a moment to just see your world. We're not just in our heads. There's a whole world happening around us in our environment, the quality of the light, the things that are around, the temperature, the sounds. We're sitting in the middle of reality as it's presenting itself right now. And you're also sitting in the instrument of your body. So let yourself feel into your bones. Find a good alignment for yourself. You need to unkink a little, stretch a little, that's fine. Moving is fine. And then to attune to the body breathing, which is just happening. Isn't that incredible that we're just breathing? We don't have to do anything. I mean, we do sometimes if we're in trouble, but it's like the miracle of human life. In and out. We're already in exchange with reality. as far as breathing. It's very alive. So I invite you to attune to the body breathing, which has a naturally relaxing effect on our nervous system. You can open or close your eyes. I tend to start with my eyes closed because it helps me attune at the beginning, feel my body and feel my breathing, and relax the sensory data a little bit, the overwhelm of seeing a visual field. And then as I settle in a little, I will open my eyes. That's just me. So meditation is a path of acceptance, of appreciative inquiry. When you find yourself noticing anything, just notice it and come back with an attitude of inclusion and acceptance. An unbiased attitude, not at war with our experience. My teacher said, gentleness, the definition of gentleness is taking an unbiased approach. So I invite you to explore that, an unbiased approach. I'm going to ring the gong, just coming back to being here with our experience just as it is. I wanted to transition into a practice from our meditation. I don't know about you, but it's one thing to talk about these things, like this idea of beyond war with ourselves and others, and everything that's coming up around it emotionally, on it, stories, everything. I'm so grateful to have ways of actually embodying it beyond words, to explore through meditation. Like I just noticed my experience, I feel different from just meditating a bit. And so I want to do a practice together called the 4-step practice. It's another method that we have for exploring that supports this path of the heart. So just starting with, I invite you to, again, if you want to, take as our views this idea of what's hardening or wanting to harden in our hearts. If there's something up or stuck in your heart right now, to just sort of find that where that is in your body. You may have a name for it or sensation of it, the feeling of it. Where is it living? And then to really explore it, to go into it. The color, the texture, the associations. The whole sort of protoplasm of that heart hardening or whatever is stuck as an energetic phenomena, to really explore it. Really let yourself feel it. Kind of like when I said to Margaret, well, what would it be like to give up? To really go there. So there's that part of you that really wants to go there, that being, that feeling, that stuckness, that concern, that expression, with all of its emotional texture and color and intensity or numbness or who knows what. And then there's also there are other parts of you, including the part of you that knows how to comfort or knows exactly what to do in relation to that part of you. Let yourself feel into that part of you that knows how to care for that part of you the way that you would care for a friend if they were freaked out about something. And let these two come together as close as you'd like to bring them. They can hug, they can chat, and they can, if you feel comfortable, even melt into each other. Melt into each other with a sense of warmth and relaxation, or even offering like a bonfire. And then finally, coming to the end, having had that journey, when you're ready, you can sort of let that go and come back into the space that we're in together and see where you are now. All the parts of you, space above us and below us and around us and inside of us, vast. We're going to ring the gong to close.